Hi, it's Trevor, and this is Discovering Gay History. Today is for Bayard Rustin. He was born on March 17th, 1912, and died August 24th, 1987. Here we go. Bayard is well known for a few things, mostly surrounding the civil rights movement. He helped organize the March on Washington in 1941. He helped organize the Freedom Rides to strengthen Martin Luther King Jr.'s leadership, and he later served as organizer of the March on Washington for Jobs and for Freedom. He also played a huge part in the 1954 boycott on the Montgomery bus system. Early in his career, he was arrested for public sex in his car. This really tainted the rest of his career, and he was forced to work in the background and sort of in an advisor role because of this. In 1937, he moved to New York. He was enrolled in college at City College in New York, and he became involved in the defense to free the Scottsboro Boys. Something I didn't know about Bayard Rustin is that he was a pretty accomplished tenor. And in 1939, he was in a short-lived musical, John Henry. His involvement in music and theater gave him the opportunity to be a regular at the Cafe Society nightclub in the Greenwich Village, and it gave him a lot of social and intellectual contacts. And in the summer of 1941, he was hired as the Race Relations Secretary for the Fellowship of Reconciliation. And it was through his relationships that he had developed at the Cafe Society and through these civil rights organizations that he and two other men came up with the idea for the March on Washington in 1941. Now, in an act of good faith, which you probably know from studying American history, but in an act of good faith, they canceled that march because Roosevelt issued the executive order, the Fair Employment Act. Now, this act banned discrimination in defense industries and federal agencies, and everyone who was organizing the march had agreed that this act was, they were going to believe that this was going to be the start of the change, and they decided to cancel the march. And Rustin was not advising that. He wanted to move forward with the march. Rustin also played a huge part in the desegregation of the bus line. In 1942, he boarded a bus in Louisville, headed for Nashville, and he sat in the second row and refused to move to the back, despite the driver's request. These were Jim Crow laws put into place, and 13 miles into the journey, the police pulled the bus over and arrested him. In 1953, in Pasadena, California, Rustin was arrested for public indecency and sodomy. He pled guilty to a lesser charge, sexual indecency, but he still spent 60 days in jail. This was the first time that his homosexuality became known to the public, and he had remained pretty private about his sexuality, although homosexuality activity was still criminalized in the United States. His homosexuality was continuously used against him. He was a close advisor of Martin Luther King Jr., and there was a senator that actually used it against him right before the March on Washington with Martin Luther King. He found an image of Rustin talking to King in the bath and made assumptions and was telling lies that the two of them were in a homosexual relationship together. This, of course, was a lie, but it was used to delegitimize the cause by saying they were communists and homosexuals and un-American. As a trusted advisor of King, he was integral in the 1962 planning of the March on Washington. The march was planned to be 100 years from the Emancipation Proclamation. Rustin was critical in the planning and organization of the march and all of the logistics of booking speakers and off-duty police officers as marshals. He was really, really critical in the logistics of planning the march. A lot of the organizers had told King that he should not be publicly recognized because he had this stain on his name as a homosexual. So as a result of all of the drama around his homosexuality and them not wanting to delegitimize the march, they made Rustin the deputy planner to Philip Randolph. Now, in 1963, Life magazine caught a picture of them and posted it as the organizers of the march, and that was sort of that. It was out in the public, and that was it. There's sort of this reoccurring tendency to describe Rustin as a pioneer out gay man, but it's a little more complex than that. He says this about it: "I was not involved in the struggle for gay rights as a youth. I did not come out of the closet voluntarily. Circumstances forced me out. While I have no problem with being publicly identified as homosexual, it would be dishonest of me to present myself as one who was at the forefront of the struggle for gay rights. I fundamentally consider sexual orientation to be a private matter. As such, it has not been a factor which has greatly influenced my role as an activist." He was only encouraged to take part of the gay rights movement in the 1980s by his partner, and that's when he really came on the scene as a gay rights activist. Bayard Rustin died in 1987 from a perforated appendix. In 2013, President Obama awarded Rustin the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and in 2020, the governor of California publicly pardoned Rustin for his crimes of public lewdness due to the laws being homophobic and outdated. All right, that does it. We'll see you tomorrow on Discovering Gay History.